Ever lie awake dreading that tough conversation? You know the one I'm talking about. Well, you're not alone. In this episode, you're getting a backstage pass in how to master difficult conversations. Whether it's with a flaky teammate, your overworked boss, or even that one friend that drives you crazy. We're going to break down the clear framework. Think a 5-step recipe to keep your cool and actually fix things so you can swap anxiety for confidence and maybe even strengthen those tricky relationships along the way. Let's make awkward chats a little less scary and a lot more productive. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I am Kimberly Benoit, and today we're going to talk about something that keeps most of us up at night. Not because it's happening, but because we know it needs to happen, and we are putting it off. And what I'm talking about are difficult conversations. You know the ones. That conversation with your team member who's missing deadlines, or maybe the talk with your manager about insane workload. It could be the discussion with your colleague whose communication style is causing a lot of friction. Or even that personal conversation with a friend or family member that you've been rehearsing in your head for weeks. Here's what usually happens. We avoid it until we cannot anymore, until something big blows up. And then we finally are forced into the conversation. It goes sideways. We get defensive, they get defensive, voices get raised. Nothing gets resolved. And now the relationship is broken, potentially forever. Has that ever happened to you? Because it's happened to me. So I'm going to kick you off with an example of how this has typically played out for many people, including myself, in leadership positions. So we're going to have a hypothetical, a woman named Sarah. She is a manager in her role, and she's very good at her job. She's very detail-oriented. She gets things done. But she has a problem. One of her direct reports, we'll call him Marcus, is consistently showing up late to work. And we're not talking like 5 minutes. Think more of like 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes up to an hour. And when he does show up, he's not prepared. He seems very scattered, and it takes him a while to get going. Obviously, Sarah knows she needs to address it, but here's what's running through her mind. Or if you're me, this is run through my mind. Well, if I bring this up, he's already sensitive. He's probably going to get mad. What if this looks like I'm micromanaging? I mean, I don't want to be that boss. Ooh, if I piss him off, he could quit on me, and I don't really want to quit. What if I am being harsh? I mean, he's getting his work done. He's meeting his goal. So am I being too difficult? Or, maybe this is just something personal and this isn't my business. Let me give it one more week to see if it gets better. So it's not uncommon. We've all done this where we kind of wait and see if it gets better. And then eventually what ends up happening, though, is it doesn't. And then next thing you know, team notices, people are starting to gossip and get angry because somehow Marcus is getting special treatment. And by the time Sarah finally has this conversation, she is frustrated. She is angry because now she's forced into this conversation. She's been bottling up this anxiety and this stress and this just annoyance for weeks now. So you know what's going to happen, right? She's going to come in really hot. Marcus is going to get angry and defensive because he's going to feel blindsided. This has been going on for weeks, and now she's coming at him, probably screaming. And he just doesn't know where it's coming from. And guess what? Catastrophic damage to that relationship. And potentially relationship to the rest of the team because it's been allowed to drag on and it's messy and we're in a mess. So here's the thing. And the thing I want to land on is that in this scenario, Sarah's not necessarily a bad manager, and Marcus isn't necessarily a bad employee. I know you're probably scratching your head at that, but stay with me. What went wrong here isn't about character or competence. I would argue what's going on here is about process. So Sarah didn't have necessarily a plan or a framework for how to have this difficult conversation. She was winging it. And when we wing difficult conversations, especially, our emotions take over other people's emotions take over. And when that happens, our messaging gets muddy and things spiral out of control. The difficult truth is, hard conversations don't have to be disasters. They don't have to end up with damaged relationships. And in fact, when they're done well, they can actually strengthen relationships because we build trust and clarity in our communication. But in order to do that, you need a process, you need a framework. And that is why I have created something called the CLEAR framework. It's a 5-step process for navigating any difficult conversation with confidence, clarity, and most importantly, care. And so in today's episode, what I'm going to give you is a taste of this framework and what it looks like in action. All right. So let's get into it. What does CLEAR framework stand for? So CLEAR stands for clarity of intent, listening first, expressing facts clearly, agreeing on next steps, and then lastly, reinforce and reflect. It's 5 steps, each one designed to keep you grounded and keep the conversation productive, and ultimately keep relationships intact. So let's walk you through what each step looks like. So the first step is clarify your intent. Before you open your mouth, you need to be very crystal clear on why you're having this conversation. And here's the key. Your intent should be constructive, not punitive. Let that sit for a second. Constructive, not punitive. So in our example, Sarah makes a mistake because she never clarified her intent. So by the time she has the conversation, what she is unconsciously doing is she is just venting her frustration. And let's be honest, that's not productive because her constructive thought should be, how do we resolve this problem? Not, I'm going to yell at you because I'm angry you're not doing what I want the way I want it done. Right? So what she should have done is taken the time to say, what's my purpose here? What outcome do I want? Maybe her intent could have been something like, I want Marcus to understand how his lateness is affecting the team, and I want to agree on a solution to resolve the problem. That is constructive, and that gives the conversation a direction. So when you clarify your intent first, it really acts like a North Star for the entire conversation. So when emotions run high, and they often do, because we are very good as people at like poking those sore spots on each other, you can return to your intent and keep the conversation on track. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this, but there's a full training that will walk you through specific questions and how to get to that. Because sometimes we think we're at our intent, but we can fool ourselves a little bit. So stay for the whole episode so you can hear how to get access to this full training. All right, step 2, listen first. We go into difficult conversations with our speeches prepared, right? I don't know about you, but if I have a difficult conversation, I want to rehearse what I'm going to say because I assume I know what they're going to say. And I want to make sure I have my points, that maybe I have a zinger in there too. So when they say that, I have this ready. Does that sound familiar? If it does, then this is an important step for you. Because the moment the conversation starts, we are simply waiting for our turn to talk. We're waiting to use these prepared sound bites in our brain. And guess what? That's not listening. That's simply waiting to talk. Real listening means creating space for the other person to share their perspective before you share yours. So here's what that might have looked like for our scenario with Sarah. Marcus, I noticed that you've been arriving late every day. So before I share my thoughts, I would love to hear from you. What's going on? And then this is the crucial component. You must actually listen. Don't interrupt. Don't defend. Don't explain. Just listen. Because the truth is, Marcus could come back with a variety of reasons. It could be that he's dealing with a family situation in the morning that's short-term in nature, so he didn't think it was necessary to bring it up. He could come back and say he didn't realize it was a big deal. Maybe he's starting later because he's working later. Maybe he's struggling with doing his job and he's on the verge of wanting to resign. Any of those answers are really important because that information is gold. When you know what is actually going on, you're no longer making assumptions. You can work with real information. And listening diffuses defensiveness because it shows respect for the person you're talking to. It often reveals solutions that you wouldn't have thought of because, quite frankly, you had that prepared narrative. This step becomes critical because it leads us into the third step, which is expressing facts clearly. So now that you've listened, now it's your turn to speak. And here's again a trap we all fall into on occasion. It's that we don't share actual facts. We share interpretations, we share assumptions, we share stories that our brains have concocted up, or judgments that are disguised as facts. So an example of something of this could be if Sarah would say something along the lines of, Marcus doesn't care about the team. That's not a fact. That's an interpretation because you don't actually know what's going on with Marcus. A fact would look like you have been coming to work 30 minutes late for the last 3 weeks. See the difference? Marcus is just lazy and doesn't care about the team. Marcus has shown up late at least 30 minutes for the last 2 weeks. Facts are observable, they are specific, and they are hard to argue with. When you stick to facts, you remove the emotional charge. You're not attacking a person's character. You're describing a behavior. And here's the magic part of this. When you pair those facts with the outcome or the impact of their behavior, it shifts things for people. So it's not just saying, hey, you've been late 30 minutes, but it's what's the impact. So say Marcus, it's a small company and Marcus is the one who's over the customer complaint board. Well, when you're showing up late, that means our customers who are calling in because they have a problem are sitting on hold for 30 minutes. Again, it becomes very clear that Marcus will now understand not only what his behavior is doing, because he might not even realize he's been that late that many times, but why that behavior matters and the impact that it is having. So again, tying those two components together. So let's get to the fourth step, which is agreeing on next steps. So this is where the rubber meets the road. A difficult conversation without next steps is just venting. And candidly, it might feel good just to go toe-to-toe with somebody because you're frustrated and angry with them. But let's go back to the intent. We want things to be constructive. Our goal is to solve a problem. And if we're just venting, nothing actually changes. And that's not what we want. So what we need here in this step is to be very clear on what is happening next. Who is doing what and when? So ideally, the last thing you want to do, a leader, is to tell someone what they need to do. But you kind of want to approach this from a shared perspective. So that might sound something like, what needs to change in order for you to get here on time? If that is the solution that you're moving forward to. Or what needs to change in order for us to get to the desired state? So for Marcus, if she needs him to get there on time, then there has to be an honest conversation about what has to change for Marcus to get there when he needs to be there. So in this conversation, he would need to commit to what he is going to do differently. And when is that going to start? And oftentimes there are things that leaders can do and commit to. And again, it's the same concept. What am I committing to? When does that start? And this becomes very important that both people leave with clarity and commitment of what comes next. Right? Because without this step, you can never get to step 5, which is reinforcement and reflection. So let's talk about reinforcement first. So here's where people kind of drop off. And it's because they think the minute the conversation is like you've stopped talking to each other, that the conversation has ended. And the reality is that's not the case. You still have this next step. You have to follow up. There has to be reinforcement of what was discussed so that you gain, if you're looking for constructive narrative and discussion, you have to get to the desired outcome. And what I encourage people to do here is as soon as the conversation is over, whether you commit to doing it or you ask the person on the other side of you to do it, there needs to be an email that recounts what was discussed, what was agreed to. So the what, the when, and partially I would encourage you to put in there the why. And then, because what happens now is you're both on the hook for what you have said you will do. And also it's documentation. So from a leadership perspective, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And it's too easy for somebody to come back and say, well, that's not what I agreed to. So do it right after the conversation. And ultimately what it does do is it allows you to reinforce your action through care. And it also creates the ability for both of you to hold each other accountable. And the last piece I want to talk about is the reflection piece. And this really is 100% just for you. When the conversation is over, always go back and reflect. What went well? What would I do differently? What did I learn about this person? And most importantly, what did I learn about myself? Because I can tell you in some of the most difficult conversations I have ever had, I learned more about myself than I learned about them. And it was usually in those moments I realized where I had more growth and work to do on myself. So don't skip this step. Difficult conversations are a skill. And like any skill, you get better with practice and honest reflection about what you want to focus on and improve going forward. All right, so let's do a quick recap. You're going to clarify your intent, so know your why before you speak. You're going to listen first, so you're going to create space for their perspective. You're going to express facts clearly, so stick to observable behaviors and impacts. Agree on the next steps so that shared commitment. You're going to reinforce and reflect, so you're going to follow up on what was agreed to, and you're going to learn so that you get better for the next. It's 5 steps. It sounds super simple. You and I both know it is not that easy. So here's what I want you to know. If you've been avoiding a difficult conversation, you're not by yourself. Most people would rather do almost anything than have a tough talk. But avoidance has a cost to you, to your relationships, your effectiveness, to your team culture. But the good news is you don't have to wait. You don't have to hope for the best. You can actually follow a process that helps you approach these in a very different way. So I teased that earlier. There is a clear framework training. If you head over to there's a link in the bio, head on over there. It's tied to my Leader Learning Lab. It's my new membership that I'm pushing out, and we're doing some special pricing right now, but come 2026, it'll be a little bit different. But in the full training, it's an on-demand training with a resource that gives you scripts and templates and gives you a lot of stuff to help get you deeper into each step. So I help you anticipate objections and how to handle emotional reactions, both yours and theirs, in a better way. And hopefully build your confidence so that the next time you have a difficult conversation, you don't avoid it. I want you to embrace it and navigate it like a pro. So again, like difficult conversations are inevitable, but disasters, my friend, are optional. So thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about the CLEAR framework, you want to learn more about the Leader Learning Lab, check out the link in the show notes. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, because this is something that applies, I feel like, to every single person I know. So let's get this information out there. Let's help people feel more comfortable in their skin. All right, until next time, let's go have some difficult conversations. I've got 2 things before I let you go. 1, if you've ever gotten any value from the show, please leave a 5-star review. It really helps and absolutely makes my day. The second thing is if you have any thoughts you'd like to share with me, please shoot me an email at podcast@KimberlyJBenoit.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, see you in the next episode.